is the
eye drops.
I like that eye drops.
Brady's most recent Costco purchase for Trig.
Emilie Kiser's picture-perfect family life drew millions of followers online, but now she's at the center of a legal battle over transparency and privacy after the tragic drowning of her 3-year-old son Trig, as she fights to keep police records sealed, records that detailed why detectives recommended a felony charge against her husband. I'm going to break down what she doesn't want the public to see, her arguments, and we will get expert insight from a former Arizona prosecutor on how cases like this are typically handled. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, real quick, if you're in a business of some kind, gotta tell you this. Big shout out to Odoo for sponsoring today's Law&Crime YouTube takeover. Odoo is an incredible all-in-one business management software that provides a range of accounting, manufacturing, and sales applications. To grow a successful business, it's important to stay focused on the creative vision, that's what matters, and not get bogged down by things like invoicing and balancing the books. That's where Odoo comes in. They are a one-stop shop game changer that gives users a clean, modern dashboard designed to provide all of your business needs. Take Odoo's accounting tool, okay? It utilizes smart AI to check bank balances, cash flow, vendor bills, invoices, all in one place. Maybe you need help with manufacturing. Odoo's apps can actually sync your inventory to purchases and keep everything running smoothly in just a few clicks. From the assembly line to the sale, Odoo's easy-to-use software helps you manage it all. And right now, you can get a free 15-day trial of Odoo's all-in-one business solution to give your business the cutting edge. Check it out at odoo.com/takeover. Arizona mom and influencer Emilie Kiser, known to her millions of followers for showcasing a seemingly picture-perfect family life, is now at the center of a growing legal battle because she has been fighting to keep the public from seeing critical details in the police investigation into the tragic drowning of her 3-year-old son Trig, and specifically the information that led Chandler police to recommend a felony charge against her husband Brady Kiser. So back in May, Trig drowned in the family's backyard pool while under his father's supervision. And we first brought you this case on Sidebar when police revealed that they were recommending a Class 4 felony child abuse charge against Brady. But now, prosecutors have chosen not to pursue charges. And Emilie's legal team is now pushing to redact parts of the police report that would explain why authorities believed her husband should have been charged in the first place. We're going to break down why that's significant. I'm also going to be joined shortly by a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor in Arizona to get his take on what typically rises to the level of criminal child abuse in cases like this, and why prosecutors in Maricopa County may have decided to not move forward with a charge. And also, can Kiser successfully prevent the public from seeing what led to a recommendation of charges? So yes, we're going to get into the state's public records laws and what's really at stake in this court fight over transparency. But first, if you haven't been following this case, here's a quick refresher. May 12th, 2025, 3-year-old Trig Kiser was tragically found unresponsive in the backyard pool of the family's Chandler, Arizona home. His father, Brady, told police that he had been watching both Trig and the couple's newborn while Emilie was out with friends. He said he became distracted for about 3 to 5 minutes caring for the baby, lost sight of Trig, who had been playing near the pool. According to police, Brady admitted it wasn't uncommon for Trig to play near the pool and that there was usually a protective cover on it, but unfortunately that day, there apparently wasn't one. And Brady told officers he found Trig floating in the pool, jumped in to rescue him. He was unresponsive, immediately calls 911, and Trig was rushed to the hospital, but tragically passed away 6 days later. Now, it seems police believed that Brady could have been criminally responsible for his son's death since he was watching both the 3-year-old and the couple's newborn at the time. And after a 2-month investigation, Chandler police announced on July 15th that they were recommending a felony charge against Brady Kiser. In a statement posted to X, the department wrote, "Following a thorough review of the evidence, investigators have recommended a Class 4 felony charge of child abuse against Brady Kiser." And the statute that they referenced, ARS 13-3623, defines child abuse under Arizona law, and a Class 4 felony in this context applies when someone with criminal negligence causes or allows a child to be injured or placed in a situation that could result in serious physical harm or death. So the case eventually landed on the desk of Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell, where it sat for review until July 25th, when her office announced that it would not pursue charges against Brady Kiser. And the decision was based on what they say was a lack of sufficient evidence to secure a conviction. In a public statement, the office said, quote, earlier this month, the Chandler Police Department submitted the case for review, recommending that Kiser be charged with 1 count of child abuse, a Class 4 felony. Kiser was home alone with his 2 children when his 3-year-old son, Trig Kiser, drowned in the family's backyard pool in May of this year. Surveillance video from outside the home showed how the drowning occurred and the actual timeline of events. In order to convict a person of this charge, the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a unanimous jury that the person failed to perceive a substantial and justifiable risk, and that failure to perceive this risk was a gross deviation from the standard of care a reasonable person would show. Every case submitted to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office is evaluated using the same standard, whether there is a reasonable likelihood of conviction. After careful review of the evidence submitted by Chandler PD, it was determined this case does not meet that standard. And due to a court order, the prosecutor's office can't discuss any additional case details at this time. In response to the decision, the Kiser family lawyer, Flynn Carey, told ABC News, quote, "We are grateful to law enforcement and the county attorney for conducting a thorough investigation and confirming that this was a tragic accident. Brady remains in the midst of the grieving process and is thankful to be with his family as they heal together. We appreciate the compassion and support shown during this difficult time." So here's the question. What made this case unique? One factor is very hard to ignore, and that is social media. Because this tragedy captured national attention in part because the mother at the center of it all, Emilie Kiser, isn't just any grieving parent. She is a very popular lifestyle influencer with over 5.5 million followers across TikTok and Instagram. Her feed reads kind of like a parenting fairy tale. Morning routines with giggling toddlers, heartwarming family cuddle sessions. Some of her most viral clips show candid footage of school runs and meal prep chaos and just rare quiet moments when the kids are napping.
Got off my second call. Teddy's down for a nap. I ate some lunch, but I love you guys so much, and I hope you have a good day.
And then there's other clips that capture the great moments, the kind of wholesome, family-centered content that helped her build such a massive following. And that online presence, so deeply rooted in family life, is part of what makes this tragic loss feel so jarring. Emilie and Brady, they aren't just navigating the unthinkable grief of losing a child, but now they have to do it with a spotlight on them. They have to do it under the intense scrutiny that comes with internet fame. So it compounds. And now that prosecutors have declined to file charges, what exactly is Emilie Kiser fighting to keep from public view? Well, according to the Arizona Republic, Kiser's legal team is pushing to block the release of specific police records, including key portions of the report that explain why detectives had recommended charging her husband, Brady, with felony child abuse. But this legal battle goes far beyond just one document, because Emilie has been fighting in court since May to stop the release of a broad range of records that were tied to her son's drowning. 911 calls, autopsy materials, police body cam footage, even surveillance video from the family's home. And in a rare move, her lawsuit has already led to a surprising response from the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office. We're going to get to that in a minute. But right now, the legal fight centers around what should be redacted before the police report is released to the public. So to help me break down what is going on here, I want to bring on Arizona criminal defense attorney and former federal and state prosecutor Kurt Altman. Kurt, so good to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time. We're going to get into this current dispute. First, let me just start with this, the core question. What typically rises to the level of criminal child abuse under Arizona law, specifically a Class 4 felony based on criminal negligence?
Well, Jesse, thanks for having me. First, to answer that question, I think typically the key word in the statute that you read to the folks is gross deviation. It's a gross deviation from what a reasonable person would do. Was Brady's conduct so bad, so out of the ordinary of what a reasonable person who's going to care for a child would be to rise to that level? It's a very kind of esoteric standard, kind of like back in the old days when you say, you kind of know it when you see it. But it is substantial. It can't just be an accident. It just can't be negligence. It has to be gross negligence, super, super bad. For instance, You leave a child outside by a pool that's uncovered knowingly, and you go in and you play video games for 15 hours and don't. That's a gross deviation. That's no question. Other areas, you get a little bit closer, right? Like you knew the cover was off the pool and you weren't paying attention to the child because you were washing your car. Well, maybe that is. So that's what the Maricopa County Attorney's Office looks at, and that's what they decide they would have to present to a jury and determine if there's a reasonable likelihood that that jury would find that this conduct was so outrageous it rises to a criminal level.
And if you take the narrative that he was watching and caring for his newborn, I think people would struggle to say how is that negligence per se. I mean, because the Chandler PD, they recommended a charge. The Maricopa County prosecutors didn't. They declined to prosecute. Is it all based on the surveillance footage, the timeline? I mean, what do you think made that decision?
I think, again, I'm speculating a little bit, but when I was at that county attorney's office, I prosecuted child abuse cases, and so did Rachel Mitchell, who's the actual county attorney now, who's in charge. So she has experience in this. I suspect, based on the Maricopa County statement, where they use the word timeline and surveillance footage, that Chandler police received a statement from Brady that gave them an initial timeline. And then they went out and they collected those surveillance footage videos. They collected other things. And I suspect that the timeline that Brady provided them didn't totally match up with what the physical evidence was. Maybe Trigg was out there a lot longer than Brady told the police. And that's why the police are like, hey, he's trying to cover something up. He really wasn't in there taking care of his child for a few minutes. He was in there for 2 hours or whatever it may be. But clearly the county attorney's office looked at it and said that discrepancy, if that is even the case, isn't enough for us to go forward because, of course, somebody that just went through a traumatic situation, somebody that just lost their 3-year-old child to a drowning isn't going to be perfectly accurate with everything they say. I'm sure they're hysterical. They're in shock.
100%. 100%. I mean, you talk about not knowing the details of your whereabouts or timeline. If you just lost your child, I can't imagine that your memory is totally accurate and you're thinking entirely clearly. So again, we don't know exactly what was said and whether or not details were corroborated or not. We have no way of knowing. But you do see this discrepancy between what law enforcement is recommending and what the DA's office is recommending. It's not uncommon for two different agencies to have two different conclusions, right? Because they both have two different jobs.
Right. No, I mean, that is typical. The police, the police always think they've done their investigation perfectly and there's a crime here. I shouldn't say always, but that's what they're looking at. The county attorney has a different perspective, what they have to do in the courtroom. By the time the police investigation is done, what the officers and detectives are going to do is they're going to come into court and just tell people what they did and what they found. The county attorney has to take those facts and merge it with the law to tell a group of people that this is a criminal offense. This rises to the level of a criminal offense. Very different things. So it's not unusual that submittals will come from police departments recommending something like aggravated assault, first-degree murder when it might be manslaughter, and the county attorney making a different decision to either not file charges or file a different charge. So that's not unusual. The unusual thing here, as I think you brought up, is that Chandler publicized what they believed should happen before the county attorney had made a decision or even, it sounds like, had a chance to look at the investigation.
I want to go back now to this current dispute. So Emilie Kiser is now fighting to block the public release of police records that explain why the charges were recommended. How common is it for families or their legal teams to try to seal investigative records after prosecutors decline to file charges? I can understand why, right? The public doesn't need to know, okay? It's nobody's business. And could there be something in there that, from a public relations point of view or a media point of view, that might not look favorably towards the family? Maybe. But at the same time, aren't they entitled to their privacy? You tell me, how common is this?
Well, I'm going to tell you it's not very common, but I might be telling you it's not very common for families to try to block this because we never see it in an arena like this. It's never been this public. It's never been with a TikTok influencer that I've seen that has, 3-4 million followers. So this is a far more high profile case, but generally it's not very common. You don't see this because people probably don't think about it. People probably don't have the resources to contact lawyers. People are probably grieving. But this is a very interesting case because public records, police reports are generally obtainable through our public records laws. They're public records once an investigation is complete, but there are exceptions to that. And in this case, the Kisers, or Emilie Kiser, looks like she's trying to argue those exceptions, saying that this is such an invasion of her family's privacy that it shouldn't be released.
Do you think that's a good argument? And by the way, do you think the fact that she is a well-known influencer with millions of followers, does it complicate the case in any way? You talked about, spotlights on her, people want information. Does it help her in any way that she's a well-known figure? Do you think she has a good argument? We'll break it down a little bit more, but do you think she might have a successful argument to make sure the public doesn't see certain details?
Well, I think it might be successful under our laws here. To go to one of your questions, though, the fact that she's an influencer, when you put yourself out in the public like that, and you are a celebrity, basically a public figure, your right to privacy is reduced some under the law. And that's probably the fight that the opponents in this are making, saying, hey, she's put herself out there. She's put herself out there as a parenting expert or whatever. I'm not a TikTok expert. And therefore, we have a right to find this stuff. But I think that her argument, especially in this case, is going to carry some weight just because there's so many people around the world, I think, trying to get this information now. And there can be no other reason other than to monetize that information or try to bring her down from her pedestal of TikTok. This is not necessarily about checking on what the government did and accountability of the government and transparency of the government. I think it's another reason, and that's what the court's going to have to figure out here.
Well, according to court filings that were reviewed by the Arizona public, the city of Chandler proposed these standard redactions to the police report, like personal information, medical information. But Emilie Kiser's legal team is asking to go much further. They want to remove 2 full pages that lay out why police believe Brady should be charged. Attorney Matthew Kelly, who's representing the Arizona Republic in the case, says those pages are crucial to public understanding of what really happened. He told the outlet in a statement, the section of the report Ms. Kiser seeks to redact contains information and context that is critical to provide the public a reasonably full understanding of the investigation of the drowning, the police department's decision to recommend criminal charges, and the county's decision not to pursue criminal charges. And Kelly also pushed back on the Kiser legal team's argument that releasing the report could lead to the creation of disturbing AI reenactments or viral misinformation. And he argued that the potential misuse of public records isn't enough to justify concealing the actions of public officials. Kurt, I'm not sure where I stand on this because, yes, transparency is important, understanding our legal process is important, understanding why certain decisions are made by public officials is important, but at the same time, she is a public figure. If there is a concern about an AI recreation or misinformation out there, isn't she in a different category? Why is it so important for the public to know what happened to her son? I mean, isn't this more for the family? I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, I think she has put herself out there as a public figure. So the standard that this is going to be viewed in is going to be different than if it was somebody that wasn't a public figure. I think that the Republic here makes a pretty good argument as well, because they're talking about the report, the written word, what the police said. And our public records laws are designed, again, to shed light on what the government does, right? That means the police, that means the prosecutors, that means the city council or whatever. And those paragraphs explain what one branch of the police department, one branch of the government is doing, and it can be compared to what the county attorney's office decided. And that really is a reflection on the government conduct, the written paragraphs. So there's a good argument there that
that's
maybe
a First Amendment argument. That's basically a First Amendment argument, right?
Essentially, right. And that really doesn't strike. If I were the Republic, I'd be arguing that that doesn't really strike at the privacy of Emilie Kiser and her family. That's a direct reflection of government conduct in this case. Now, what probably is unnecessary and doesn't go to government conduct are the surveillance photos or the surveillance videos, which are part of the report. I'm sure the public and the people out there on the internet would love to get their hands on that. The autopsy report and the graphic photographs and cause of death, not really a reflection on the government's conduct in this case, but certainly an invasion of the privacy of Emilie Kiser and her family. So I think the judge is going to have a hard time here, but probably kind of split it down the middle, review every piece that they want.
And I wonder if with the advance of AI and AI-generated material, courts have to keep up. And while it might have made sense to release surveillance footage 20 years ago or 10 years ago, is there now going to be a change where, because there can be tools that are used to manipulate videos or alter videos in some ways, or use that material to create totally new videos, do courts have to say we have to be a little bit more careful?
I think absolutely. I mean, AI is advancing so rapidly, and as you know, the law doesn't always keep up with advances in technology. And today, with those advances, it's even harder to do that. So there's all kinds of discussions nationwide and changes nationwide in how the law and courts are going to deal with AI. And I'm certainly certain that this will be one of those cases where they're dealing with the very same thing.
So as I mentioned earlier, this is not the first time that Emilie has tried to block records. On May 27th, she filed a lawsuit seeking to prevent the release of a wide range of materials, everything from the 911 audio to the autopsy report to security camera footage. And the suit described Triggs drowning as every parent's worst nightmare. And they claim that Emilie and her family, they were trying to grieve privately, but were being overwhelmed by media coverage and record requests. And part of the filing reads, Emilie is going through every parent's worst nightmare right now. She lost her young son following a heartbreaking accidental drowning at the family's home. Emilie is trying her best to be there for her surviving son, but every day is a battle. Emilie and her family desperately want to drive in private, but sadly, the public will not let them. Triggs' death has become a media frenzy. Appallingly, 100+ public record requests have been filed with both the City of Chandler and the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office. The records requested presumably reveal graphic, distressing, and intimate details of Triggs' death that have no bearing on government accountability, which is what we've been talking about. And the lawsuit even notes that Emilie herself has not viewed the investigation materials. A footnote in the suit reads, neither Emilie nor Emilie's counsel have reviewed the investigative or post-mortem records at issue, including but not limited to the police report, supplemental reports, security camera footage of the accidental drowning, body-worn camera footage, scene photos, 911 recording transcripts, autopsy report, autopsy photos, death certificate, because these records have not been made available to them, nor does Emilie wish to ever view them. And that's understandable. Now, while Arizona's public records law favors transparency, our understanding is the law does allow courts to weigh individual privacy rights. The filing reads, Arizona law recognizes that family members have a compelling privacy interest in preventing the disclosure of graphic materials related to a loved one's injuries or death. Courts have acknowledged that releasing such records do not serve a legitimate public oversight purpose when the facts surrounding the death are not in dispute. Arizona's public records law served the purpose of ensuring that the people are able to monitor the activities of their government, not the lives of their fellow citizens. And in fact, a judge had temporarily granted her request in June, as the Arizona Republic reports that both sides did agree to an order preventing the release of the records while the case was being investigated. And by the way, I mentioned this before, but you want to know what the shocking decision was by the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office? They removed summary information from their website regarding Triggs' death, meaning if you even try to type in Triggs' name on the site, nothing comes up. Normally, medical examiners do list basic information on their website about death investigations, usually just includes a deceased person's name, cause or manner of death, but that has all been removed. And the Arizona Republic also reports that the ME's office even worked with the Kiser family to help them get a seal placed on the records. Kurt, is that unusual for an ME's office to do that?
Yeah, it's pretty unusual. Yeah, but I think the ME's office in this case knew about the litigation, so they were going to preempt any disclosure to the public until ordered by the court. They're going to follow what the court does. And quite frankly, it probably the requests and the 100 plus, I bet it's much more than 100 plus public information requests to the ME's office, probably just about shut that office down. They probably had to try to respond to all these things or start working on response to all these things under their obligations under the law, and just couldn't do it. So once this lawsuit got filed and they knew what was coming, I think they wisely, preliminarily took that information off their website, aren't going to deal with any of these until ordered by the court to do something, and they'll follow that court order.
What do you think is going to happen here? Because on one hand, you could say if this was an accident where the police never recommended charges, the public should not be entitled maybe to anything, right? Because it's not in dispute. This is a tragic situation. The family deserves privacy. Is the argument going to be made, well, there is a dispute, right? The law enforcement said one thing, the prosecutor said another thing. There is a dispute. We have a right to know why. What do you think is going to happen here? How's the court going to balance this? And when do you think we're going to get a decision?
I mean, that's what's so unique about this, right? Because law enforcement did say one thing and the prosecutor's office said another thing. That happens a lot. It usually just doesn't happen in the public arena. Like, nobody knows about that. So what do I think is going to happen? I think the court's going to have a lot of work in front of it. And I think the court is going to balance the privacy rights and the public interest rights, and probably have to take in-camera reviews of just about everything in that investigation and decide this can be disclosed, this goes too far, this is fine, this goes too far, and work through the requests and the entire investigation in that manner and issue an order that's going to be longstanding. So while these requests come in, and they'll probably come in for years, there'll be guidance to the Chandler Police Department, the Medical Examiner's Office, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. They'll follow that court order, release portions of this investigation and not others. I can see the report being released, and certainly not the surveillance videos and things like that.
Here's what I'll just say, just to make it very clear. We put the legal aside. This is such a horrible event. This is such a terrible situation. And I can't say this enough. Our hearts, our prayers, our thoughts go out to the Kiser family, Emilie and Brady, as they navigate this terrible, terrible tragedy. Kurt Altman, thank you so much for coming on and breaking down the legal aspects of this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.